Welcome back. You're watching Beyond World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Channa.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On World DNA today, the head of Israel's National Security Council has said that the country expects another 7 months of fighting in Gaza to achieve the claimed main objective, which is of destroying Hamas. Meanwhile, the US has issued a strong warning to Israel over its lack of a post-war strategy for Gaza. We'll, of course, be tracking all of that on the show today.
Seems like Israel is planning to take this war right into 2025. We will be tracking that also on the show. North Korea has fired suspected short-range ballistic missiles towards the Sea of Japan. And this comes just soon after a satellite rocket launched by Pyongyang ended in failure. We are going to be tracking the implications of that as well. Let's get you started with the headlines. This is World DNA.
Amid global outcry, Israel's national security advisor says war in Gaza will likely continue through at least end of the year.
Because in the absence of a plan for the day after, there won't be a day after.
US top diplomat Anthony Blinken warns of chaos, says Israel needs post-war plan, quote-unquote, as quickly as possible.
Washington says its ban on Ukraine using American weapons to strike military targets in Russia will remain. Announcement widens division between Western allies.
Seoul accuses North Korea of firing at least 10 short-range ballistic missiles towards the waters of its eastern coast, days after a failed launch attempt to put spy satellite into orbit.
British Parliament formally dissolves ahead of July 4th election. Polls indicate Labour expected to win over ruling Conservative Party.
India's Met body says severe heat wave accompanied by dry weather likely to continue in large parts of India till the 1st of June.
India's R. Pragnananda scores his first ever classical win over world number 1 Magnus Carlsen in the Norway chess. The win helps the 18-year-old take the sole lead after the third round of the tournament. And our top focus right now on the show. At least 2 people have been seriously injured in a car ramming attack near the West Bank city of Nablus.
Well, the Israeli Defense Forces say that following the attack, which occurred near the Atamar settlement, the IDF said it has launched a manhunt for the suspect now. In another development, the Israeli military announced operational control over the Philadelphia route along the Gaza-Egypt border, discovering dozens of rocket launchers and at least 20 cross-border smuggling tunnels.
IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said that the captured strip of land, which runs for a total of 14 kilometers along the Gaza-Egypt border, served as what he called Hamas's oxygen pipeline for smuggling weapons along the corridor, which is close to the southern city of Rafah. The IDF said it has located tunnels that cross into Egypt.
So far, our forces have discovered about 20 tunnels in the area of the Philadelphia axis. We are checking these tunnels and neutralizing them while the forces continue the raids.
Meanwhile, a senior Israeli official has said war in Gaza may continue at least through the rest of the year, even though international pressure on Israel intensifies to end fighting. Israel's national security advisor said in an interview that Israeli forces may have to fight another 7 months to achieve the destruction of Hamas' power and military capabilities.
However, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Israel to come up with a post-war plan for Gaza and warned that the absence of it could trigger lawlessness, chaos, and a comeback by Hamas in the territory. Speaking at a press conference in Moldova, Blinken said that while Israel has achieved real success in destroying the capacity of Hamas to repeat October 7th attack, the Israeli government now will have to determine whether further gains against Hamas would be durable without a post-war plan.
It has to ask whether, and especially in the absence of a plan for the day after in Gaza, further incremental gains against Hamas, but gains that may not be durable in terms of Hamas's defeat in the absence of a plan.
On the other hand, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused International Criminal Court of seeking to handcuff Israel in Gaza. Netanyahu said to former U.S. presidential hopeful Nikki Haley after their meeting in Jerusalem, and Netanyahu was referring to ICC prosecutor Karim Khan seeking his arrest warrants over the conflict in the Gaza Strip.
There are other people, like the prosecutor in The Hague, that seeks to handcuff us. And handcuffing us is handcuffing you too, because all democratic societies would be imperiled if the right to attack, to take out these terrorists who use civilians as a human shield is not challenged. All democracies are in peril.
Well, Norway joined Spain and Ireland to formally recognize a Palestinian state as Israel continues to pound the besieged Gaza Strip, and that happened recently.
Right, Shivan. And WION's principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibbal, spoke to Norway's foreign minister to know about the reasons behind the move. Take a listen to this exclusive conversation.
We do this because we want to add our voice to all those who are saying that we need to get out of this horrible cycle of violence where you have terrorist attacks on Israel, and then very massive response overstepping the boundaries of international law in Gaza, and settler violence increasing settlements in the West Bank. All of this together is a cycle of violence, and we want to reach out a hand to all those moderate forces who still believe in a two-state solution. And we do not do this in a vacuum, because the three countries mentioned and many other European countries are now working closely with an Arab group of foreign ministers who have taken the initiative to update the old idea of a regional peace in the Middle East, where you combine the Palestinian state and the recognition and establishment of a Palestinian state, the strengthening of the Palestinian Authority, together with the normalization between Saudi Arabia and other Arab states and Israel.
In response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Western nations sent defensive weapons to Ukraine's armed forces in order to repel Russia's armored brigades.
Well, of course, that war is still continuing, but the action has not gone well with Russia, which possesses world's largest nuclear arsenal. And now a Russian think tank has suggested that Moscow is considering using demonstrative nuclear explosions to intimidate the West and make them stop sending weapons to Ukraine.
Dmitry Suslov, a member of the Moscow-based Council for Foreign and Defense Policy, made this proposal. However, it is also very interesting to note that Suslov's ideas sometimes become government policies.
The proposal was made a day after Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the West and NATO members in Europe to stop playing with fire by proposing to let Kiev use Western weapons to strike targets inside Russia, a move which could snowball into a global conflict, a direct conflict between Russia and NATO forces. Now, Ukraine's leadership asserts that in order to defend itself and prevent air, missile and drone attacks, it must be able to target Russian military targets and forces inside Russia with long-range Western missiles. A view which has received some backing from Western nations, although the US has not backed it, but not yet, of course, from Washington.
US President Joe Biden's administration has long resisted authorizing Ukraine to use US weapons inside Russia, as there are concerns that it could lead to a direct American confrontation with the nuclear-armed adversary. Well, Britain, France and Germany are among the European nations that have stated having no problem with Kiev firing Western missiles against Russian forces before they cross into Ukraine or at arms stored in Russian region.
The Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, recently asked member nations to remove limitations on the use of their weapons in Russia, a comment widely speculated to be directed towards Biden administration.
Meanwhile, to intercept incoming threats, thousands of surveillance and potentially armed drones will be patrolling NATO's border with Russia and Belarus, under plans of creating a drone wall. Well, the president of Latvia told The Times that both sophisticated and off-the-shelf drones will monitor migration as well as any other possible provocations.
Ministers from the three Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia, as well as Finland, Norway and Poland, convened last week to talk about the wall plans. However, time and other specifics are still being worked out. There's less information out there at the moment. It will involve personnel operating drones in the skies from Norway to Poland, along with some kind of military infrastructure. That's all that's known at the moment.
Now, both Belarus and Russia have been accused of sending desperate people to the borders in order to show discord and chaos within their own countries, and also with using migration as a weapon against NATO and European allies.
Over in the US, the historic hush money trial against former US President Donald Trump has come to a close finally.
And the case is now with the jury, which will have to decide whether Trump falsified the business records to hide hush money payments or not. Well, the 12-member jury began the deliberations just a short while ago. After prosecution and defense, they delivered their closing arguments on Tuesday.
All eyes are on the 12-member jury, which may make a judgment on the 29th of which may make a judgment soon or in the coming days on whether Trump will become the country's first former president to be convicted of a crime. Now, a landmark decision that could put an end to his 2024 presidential elections, his bid to be the next president altogether. Before the jury headed out to deliberate on the verdict, Judge laid out the rules and instructions for general juror conduct. Merchant also reminded the jurors that the verdict has to be unanimous, in line with legal requirements. The judge also discussed and explained all 34 counts with which Donald Trump has been charged.
Now, while making closing arguments on Tuesday, prosecutor Joshua Steinglass told jurors that they would need to assess whether Trump falsified business documents to cover up a hush money payment to adult movie star Stormy Daniels in the run-up to the 2016 elections. He further went on to say that they should also consider broader concerns such as the possibility of Trump and his allies, including tabloid publisher David Pecker, undermining the election by controlling what information would reach the voters.
Trump's lawyer urged jurors to look past the details in his criminal trial and focus on the paperwork at the heart of the case. He argues the jurors should not trust star witness Michael Cohen's testimony. He says Cohen is a convicted felon with a record of lying. which also questions Stormy Daniels' credibility. Now, the former US president has pleaded not guilty on all counts and denied any wrongdoing. In customary fashion, Trump was seen addressing the media ahead of the jury deliberations. The former US president claims the charges against him are rigged.
Very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job, and it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace, and I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see.
And for more on the hush money trial, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Take a look.
On the first day of jury deliberations, the 12-person jury deliberated for about 4.5 hours but did not reach a verdict. Judge Juan Merchan had delivered lengthy instructions to the jury earlier in the day. The jury also requested to see portions of testimony and review the judge's instructions, which will happen on Thursday as well.
Susan further explains the significance of the jury's request to rehear portions of testimony. Take a look.
The jury's request to rehear portions of the testimony and review the judge's instructions suggests that they are carefully considering all of the evidence and legal framework for this case. This is a positive sign for prosecution, as it also indicates that the jury is taking their responsibility seriously and is thoroughly evaluating all of the evidence in front of them. The request to review the judge's instructions also indicates that the jury is perhaps grappling with the legal nuances of this case and wants to ensure that they understand the charges and evidence before reaching a verdict. Ultimately, this could mean that the jury is leaning towards a guilty verdict, or it might not, but we'll have to wait and see after deliberations.
There is a major development coming from South Africa's general elections. The African National Congress, the ANC, is seeking a majority to remain in power.
While polling is underway in the Rainbow Nation, the Electoral Commission has already started announcing results in small tranches. Now, there has been a late surge in voters as well. Voting started at 7 a.m. local time. The voter turnout may equal or surpass the 66% mark of the 2019 polls. Some opposition parties, however, have made a staunch criticism of the polling procedure. South Africans are choosing 400 members of the National Assembly, who in the coming weeks will then choose a president. This is the biggest test for the ruling ANC party.
The ANC came to power after apartheid ended in South Africa in 1994. Nelson Mandela received 62.5% of the votes. Thabo Mbeki took the reins from him in 1999 and came with a bigger mandate. He got re-elected with an even larger support, and that dipped a little with Jacob Zuma in 2009. And since then, it has been on a decline. Last election was the first time ANC received less than 60% of the votes, and this year it is being projected that the party will receive lower than 50%.
This is the day when South Africa decides on the future of our country, who should lead the government of South Africa. And I have no doubt whatsoever in my heart of hearts that the people will once again invest confidence in the African National Congress to continue to lead this country.
Out of the 62 million people, about 45% have registered for this year's elections. That 28 million voters, a little over 23,000 polling stations were set up, and 70 political parties and 11 independents were in the fray.
The whole road is full of potholes and we have a lack of water. The other village doesn't get water. So we want to vote so that they can bring us the good service delivery.
Many in the country are fed up with high unemployment that is at its highest right now. Other issues include crime, corruption scandals, and power cuts and water shortages. In 2023, the economy grew at just 6%.
We are young and there's no job for youth. We have degrees, we're not getting job. There's no difference actually. So I'm here to make a difference, to vote for MK.
North Korea has fired a barrage of missiles towards its waters and eastern coast.
Well, according to Seoul, Pyongyang fired 10 short-range ballistic missiles towards the Sea of Japan, and this comes just days after a satellite rocket launched by Pyongyang ended in failure.
Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said that the missiles apparently landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. The suspected missiles were fired from the Sunan area near its capital Pyongyang at 6:14 a.m. local time on Thursday. There were no immediate reports of damage.
Meanwhile, Japan's Coast Guard has issued a maritime safety advisory over the North Korean launch and has urged ships to exercise caution if they find any fallen objects.
The latest launch of missiles comes one day after North Korea flew hundreds of trash-carrying balloons towards the south in retaliation against South Korean activists flying anti-North Korean propaganda leaflets across the border.
Tensions on the Korean peninsula have increased in recent months as the pace of both North Korea's weapons testing and South Korea's combined military exercises with the US and Japan have increased in a cycle of tit for tat.
Four Pakistani nationals have been killed and 2 injured in a firing by Iranian forces in Balochistan province of Pakistan.
Well, the shooting took place near the Pakistan-Iran border in Warshok district, following which an investigation has been launched to determine the reason for the shooting. The border area of Balochistan has been a sensitive location for Pakistan and Iran. In January earlier this year, Iran shocked Pakistan by carrying out airstrikes against alleged militant hideouts in the rest of Balochistan province, and
that was done in a tit-for-tat airstrike. Pakistan used killer drones and rockets against what it called terrorist hideouts in Iran's Sistan Balochistan province. Further, Pakistan recalled its envoy to Tehran and barred his counterpart to return to Islamabad, cancelling all high-level diplomatic and trade engagements. However, the two sides soon acted to restrain tempers through diplomatic channels. Right, and moving on to other stories, United States and China may not agree on a lot of issues. Might the two nations have found a common ground when it comes to pandas?
Well, US First Lady Jill Biden has signaled that the two countries are engaging in panda diplomacy. We've heard that before as well. What is panda diplomacy? Well, pandas are used as a sign of goodwill. The World Wildlife Fund for Nature organization also uses pandas in their logo. This species is often used in diplomatic events and to foster positive relationships between countries.
So China has taken a step in this very direction. Earlier, Beijing's foreign ministry announced that it will send 2 giant pandas, Yuanshan and Xinbao, to the San Diego Zoo. This particular zoo has a long-standing partnership with China on wildlife conservation research.
China has been lending the bears to American zoos for more than 5 decades as a friendly gesture between the two countries. However, when United States started returning most of its pandas to China, many were worried that panda diplomacy might be ending. Pandas live mainly in temperate in temperate forests high in the mountains of southwest China. Pandas are very shy by nature and they don't venture into areas where people live. Now, this restricts pandas to very limited areas. They're not found all over the world. They survive almost entirely on bamboo to stay healthy, and these animals have to eat a lot, up to 15% of their body weight in 12 hours. Only about 1,500 of these black and white bears survive in the wild.
What is Well, it's now time for a quick short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is, of course, World DNA. We will be back on the other side after the break. Delhi recorded a temperature of 52.9 degrees Celsius. This was, of course, just yesterday, the highest in India. But now India's weather department is investigating the readings.
Right, Shivan. Also on the other side of this short break, we'll... Right, also on the other side of this short break, India has successfully test-fired the Rudram 2 anti-radiation missile from the Indian Air Force's Sukhoi Su-30 Mk1 of Odisha's coast. This and a lot more on the other side of World DNA. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Beyond Police One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Africa's youngest nation goes to the polls in December as politicians of all hues, including current South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, jostle for power. A philanthropic organization urges rebels to surrender by dropping hundreds of thousands of flyers from a helicopter above their strongholds in dense rainforests. And an ancient game called Kora promotes unity and tradition in Algeria's mountains. Watch Wild of Africa at these times on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with Reisha and me, Shivan. Let's get you started with the headlines we're tracking for you.
Amid global outcry, Israel's national security advisor says war in Gaza will likely continue through at least the end of this year.
Because in the absence of a plan for the day after, there won't be a day after.
Top US diplomat Anthony Blinken warns of chaos, says Israel needs post-war plan as quickly as possible for Gaza. Washington says its ban on Ukraine using American weapons to strike military targets in Russia will remain. Announcement widens division between Western allies.
Jury in Donald Trump's New York hush money trial finishes first day of deliberations without reaching verdict after meeting for more than 4.5 hours.
Seoul accuses North Korea of firing at least 10 short-range ballistic missiles towards the waters off its eastern coast, days after a failed launch attempt to put spy satellite into orbit.
British Parliament formally dissolves ahead of July 4th elections. Polls indicate Labour expected to win over ruling Conservative Party.
BlackRock's iShare Bitcoin Trust becomes the world's largest Bitcoin fund. The trust adds up nearly $20 billion in total assets since listing in January.
India's Met body says severe heat wave accompanied by dry weather likely to continue in large parts of the country till June 1st.
India's R. Pragnananda scores his first ever classical win over world number 1 Magnus Carlsen in the Norway Chess. The win helps the 18-year-old take the sole lead after the third round of the prestigious tournament.
Now, with tensions and wars escalating in different parts of the world, India has made additions to its defense system. Well, New Delhi has a new weapon. Today, I will tell you about India's Rudram 2 air-to-surface missile, which was successfully test-fired from the Indian Air Force's Sukhoi Su-30 Mk-1 off Odisha's coast. Well, Rudram 2 is India's first indigenous anti-radiation missile, which is indigenously manufactured by India's DRDO. Rudram, which means remover of sorrows. It is a solid propelled air-launched missile system meant for air-to-surface role to neutralize many types of enemy assets. It is designed to seek and destroy the enemy defense systems, including radar communication assets and other radio frequency sources. As per reports, the missile can be launched from different altitudes, and the missile has a range of around 300 kilometers. It can hit a speed of Mach 5.5, which is roughly around 6,800 kilometers per hour. Well, not only this, the missile also has a lot more features. The missile can reportedly carry a 200-kilogram payload. Rudram 2 can pick up enemy radio frequencies and radar signals from over 100 kilometers. Not only this, it can also operate in lock-on before or after launch systems. Rudram 2 is the latest version after the Mark 1 version that was tested 4 years ago. Well, India currently uses Russia's KH-31 missile in its Sukhoi fighter jets, and the Rudram 2 will replace Russia's KH-31 missile. Well, according to officials, the test met all the trial objectives, validating the propulsion system and control algorithm. Moreover, the successful flight test of Rudram 2 is a major achievement for the Indian Air Force as it continues to make advancements in its arsenal. Well, that's all that we have on the latest Rudram 2 anti-radiation missile. Back to you, Shivan.
Delhi recorded a temperature of 52.9 degrees Celsius on Wednesday afternoon. It's the highest ever in India. But now the country's Met Department is investigating the readings of the temperature sensor from Delhi's Mungeshpur weather station. IMD officials have said this could be due to a sensor error as well, and it may not be that hot. Well, Minister of Earth Sciences Kiran Rijiju also said that it is very unlikely that the temperature in Delhi would reach such a staggering high. Delhi has been reeling under severe heatwave conditions over the past several days. While the maximum temperature has been hovering around the 50 degrees Celsius mark, the minimum is inching closer to 30 degrees. Earlier this week, the Weather Office had warned of extreme heat in most parts of the national capital and issued a red alert as well. As Delhi swelters in extreme heat and air conditioners run overtime, power demand has touched an all-time high as well. To add to the city's problems, a water crisis is on the horizon now. To minimize water wastage, the Aam Aadmi Party government has imposed fines for washing cars with hose pipes, overflowing tanks and using drinking water for commercial purposes.
Well, bringing some respite from the extreme heat and the water shortages, the national capital received showers this afternoon, but the rain is likely to raise the humidity level further. On the world of business now, China is looking to negotiate with the European Union regarding trade tariffs on EVs.
And this comes amid a booming Chinese EV industry, eager to capture a share of the lucrative European market. Analysts estimate a 10% tariff increase, which could cost Chinese exporters an additional $1 billion annually.
China has expressed its discontent, threatening retaliatory tariffs on European luxury car imports. German automakers who rely heavily on Chinese sales have voiced concerns over potential negative impact.
Both sides have reasons to avoid a full-blown trade war. China needs profitable European exports to offset declining domestic margins, while European automakers seek access to China's vast market and potential EV partnerships to remain competitive. Talks are underway to reach a deal before the provisional tariffs are implemented in early June.
The potential EU tariffs on Chinese EVs are a complex issue with far-reaching consequences. While the European Commission cites unfair subsidies as a justification, China claims that the probe was flawed. This has led to warnings of higher tariffs for major Chinese EV manufacturers. China is mulling lowering tariffs on European auto imports, potentially softening the blow.
Additionally, Chinese EV makers are already making significant investments in Europe, building factories and entering new markets. This has led to some interesting partnerships like the joint venture between Stellantis and Leapmotor, where a European giant is partnering with a rising Chinese player.
Europe is an open market for many Chinese brands. We will start by introducing Leapmotors in 9 European countries, no less than 9, in Belgium, in France, in Italy, in Germany, in Greece, in the Netherlands, in Romania, in Spain, and in Portugal. Those are the 9 countries that are going to start benefiting from the exports of Leapmotor's models out of China.
This suggests that China may have room to absorb some of the tariff increase, especially considering the high profit margins they currently enjoy in Europe. The next few months will be crucial in assessing the outcome of this trade dispute. Both sides have a lot to lose and negotiations are likely to intensify as the deadline approaches.
All right, we now shift focus to how sanctions hit Russia is looking at new options for trade settlements. Stable coins have emerged as a viable alternative here.
Well, Russian commodities firms having trouble settling transactions with their Chinese counterparts, and they are now using this very method. Our next report tells you more.
Two Russian metals producers, which are unsanctioned, are using stablecoins and other cryptocurrencies to settle some cross-border transactions with mostly Chinese clients and suppliers. This is according to a Bloomberg report quoting top executives as sources. Settlements may flow through Hong Kong. The fact that significant Russian firms are using blockchain 2 years after the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine shows the economic impact of international war prohibitions. Since the crisis began, Russian companies have had trouble getting paid and buying equipment and raw materials. Even when not sanctioned, individuals and firms have faced repeated US, EU, and other allies' sanctions. Even China has found banking transactions with Russia harder this year. Compliance has tightened. This is driven by the US Treasury Department imposing secondary restrictions on lenders supporting sanctions evasion. Bloomberg sources say the alternative is often slower transactions or worse, risking an overseas bank account that could be frozen. Some unsanctioned companies open dozens of accounts in different countries only to see them frozen one after the other. Using cryptos for payments is not unusual for countries under sanctions. Transactions for cargo from Venezuela are increasingly done using Tether. Many of the deals are brokered through intermediaries based in Dubai, but these transactions come at steep discounts. Crypto's growing role in settlements also indicates a shift in Russian central bank's approach to the industry. Previously, the Bank of Russia had considered a blanket ban on the use and creation of all cryptos, but in November, Governor Elvira Nabiullina told Parliament that she supports experimenting with such payments in international transactions. The central bank said it has observed significant rise in crypto activity among Russians in recent quarters. Crypto-linked banking services in Russia are also expanding. Business Bureau, WION, World is One.
Let's now take a look at all the news from the world of technology. Well, the European Union has announced the creation of an AI office. The office will comprise tech experts, lawyers, and economists to regulate AI under a new law. The 140-member AI office will be established within the EU Commission, which is its executive arm and also acts as the bloc's tech regulator. According to the officials, the AI office will evaluate and test the purpose of AI and the scientific community. Reportedly, the AI office will take effect from June 16th. This year, EU approved the world's first comprehensive rules to govern AI that focuses on powerful systems like OpenAI's ChatGPT. The EU's law, known as the AI Act, has tougher rules for AI systems such as ChatGPT and takes a risk-based approach to the technology. This means that the higher the risk to Europeans' rights or health, the greater the bloc's obligation to protect individuals from harm.
The next time you pull up at a gas station in UAE, don't be surprised if you see robots filling up your car's fuel tank. UAE's Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, commonly known as ADNOC, have launched a robotic fueling arm pilot. The aim is to provide customers an AI experience at a fuel station. Designed to be fast and environmentally friendly, the robotic arm fills the car using onboard sensors and cameras. ADNOC is hoping the robotic arm will help support the existing staff, boost productivity and reduce wait times at fuel stations.
Look at this. This is a robot guide dog made by a Chinese university. The dog can identify obstacles and choose routes to avoid them. That's not all. The robot can also climb stairs and respond to human voice commands. Moreover, unlike real guide dogs, which are inherently colorblind, this dog can see colors, enabling it to identify and follow traffic lights.
The robot has reached acceptable levels in terms of stability, noise and intelligence. Shanghai Disabled Persons Federation said it could be put into trial use in November this year. The robot has reached acceptable.
According to reports, there are over 17 million visually impaired people in China. The number of active guide dogs in the country is only around 400. Researchers are hoping the robot guide dog will help more visually impaired people step out of their homes and go out safely. Next up, let's take a look at all that's making news in the world of sports, starting with India's R. Pragnananda, who has defeated Magnus Carlsen on his home turf for his first ever classical win over the world number 1 at the Norway chess tournament. The 18-year-old, playing with white pieces, was trailing on the clock for most part of the game. Despite the odds, Pragnananda managed to beat arguably the greatest player of all time. The victory took Pragnananda's tally to 5.5 points out of 9 after 3 rounds. He is now the sole leader in the open section of the prestigious 6-player tournament. Incidentally, his sister R. Vaishali retained her sole lead